Okay, so let's start the session. Uh, Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the next session of Sitecore User Group Jaipur. And this time we have Sebastian Winter with us to present about Content Hub One. Sebastian is working as a developer advocate at Sitecore, and he's also a Sitecore Technology MVP in 2018-19. So I'm going to hand over this session to Sebastian. And Sebastian, I think you can start with your presentation.
Yeah, great, thanks. So yeah, welcome to the session, Crawl, Walk, Run with Content Hub One. You introduced me already. My name is Sebastian. I'm a developer advocate at Sitecore and responsible for all the content-related products within Sitecore. So that can be XM Cloud, that can be Content Hub One, Content Hub Dam, XM, all those products basically. So my goal today is that you have an understanding on what Content Hub One is, and you know how it can help you and your clients in their daily business at the end. And we will cover content modeling, the available APIs, and the command line interface, and how to develop using Content Hub One. So more or less a full picture of what you need to know about Content Hub One to get started. Just a little introduction to set the frame. As you know, Sitecore's product portfolio has massively grown in the past 2 years, and Sitecore has added a new range of composable SaaS products dealing with content, commerce, and all engagement-related topics. So the great thing is that all of these products can be picked based on the requirements the customers need, and they are easy to integrate with each other, but work also great with products of other vendors. Since December 2022, Content Hub One is publicly available, sorry, and within the Content Cloud. So let's talk about this, kind of still great, obviously great, but still new product. So in today's world, consumers interact with brands in multiple channels, and the number of channels has massively increased over the past years. In order to be present and consistent in each channel, marketers need to be empowered to maintain content centrally. So marketers need tools that are agile, flexible, and modular. So Content Hub One is exactly offering that functionality. But what is Content Hub One? So Content Hub One is a headless content management system that combines an easy-to-use interface for marketers with APIs to deliver and manage content at scale. And all of this as a software as a service offer, like all our composable products that we are currently offering. I keep this a bit shorter, the part for marketers, but so for marketers, basically, Content Hub One is offering flexible content modeling, effortless content authoring, and reusable omnichannel content delivery. But I think we have a more developer-focused audience, so let's take a look what also Content Hub One offers for developers. So as a developer, you can work independently from marketers, which means that you can let the business users focus on creating impactful content while you as developers build engaging experiences. And as Content Hub One is offering APIs, it becomes language and framework agnostic. So however you are able to connect to these APIs, this can be the framework of choice. You can leverage a rich set of SDKs and APIs supporting basically any kind of front-end framework. And with a fast and globally distributed performance, you basically have a GraphQL endpoint at the edge available to query for your content from your application. So let's just have a quick look on how Content Hub One looks. Just see where my browser window is. There we go. Putting it. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I just need to turn to the other monitor now. So when you enter Content Hub One, this is basically what you get. So you have a kind of homepage where you have a welcome message and then have all kinds of information. That may vary based on the role that you have, like if you are a user or if you are an admin. I'm an admin, so I also see developer-focused information, for example, how to install the SDK for JavaScript or .NET. So that's nothing a user would be interested in, right? The main areas that you see here basically represent also the navigation. So we have content types, we have our media, And we have a renamed one, so that has been recently renamed, which is called integration, and it contains the API keys and the OAuth client information. And we talk about that in more details very soon. On the right hand, you have some helping links on directly into the documentation, so that if you want to know something about the SDK or the CLI or the APIs, you can directly go there. You can also directly raise a support case in case needed from here. You can go to the trainings, and you can directly check out the starter kits. Let's just have a quick look around. So starting with the content for now, we have a very flat hierarchy of content. So everything is dropped basically in the list, and what has been worked on last is on the top of the list. However, you can search for content. You can filter content by content types, and you can even filter content additionally, or like also by the status, like if content has been already published or what content has been changed or is in draft state. So a bit of a workflow here. So for example, I've created here a product, or let me just create a new one. So I want to create a new content piece of type products. And the fields you see here are the fields I have defined. So we will talk about content modeling in a minute and how to set that up. But let's say I want to create a new product, and just as simple as this, I want to make it an apple. So the standard fields I have here is always the ID, which gets populated once I save this product or this content item, and I have a name field, which is the name of the content item, basically. So you can compare it with XM or XP as an item name. And then we have the custom fields that relate to the particular content. So we can say, well, my product name is Apple, and I can have a product description. This is a delicious fruit. I can say, well, if this will be something maybe on my shop at the end, I want to provide maybe a quantity. I can choose from existing media. I can also upload media. We come to the media section a little later. And let's see if we have apples here. Yeah, we do have apples. So let's select that as an image for that content. I can say maybe this is 155. And I can even say, well, there might be related products. So let me, and I can directly create a new record from here. So I can create a new related product from here, or I can search for already existing. So I've created, for example, kiwi as a product, and let's say this relates for whatever reason, and maybe also strawberries relate to the apple. So let's select that, and I can see I have related products. So I make relations between different content items. Let's save that. And what you will see in a second is that the next step I can do, for sure, I can change the content, but I can also publish the content, which makes the content then available through the GraphQL endpoint of my delivery layer. And we will talk about the architecture also in a bit. So let me publish this for now. And just go back. Yeah, as we talk about content types later, let's talk about media real quick. So here I basically have also content items, but these are media items. So they store media information. I can upload new assets, but I can also see what I have here. So I gave that a name called pizza, and you see the ID of the content item or media item here. There is a description field, which is also just standard, and then I can upload an image. Basically, that's what the media item is used for. Right. And then I have my integration section, which I can have API keys. Does it open up? I probably didn't hit it right. So you can create API keys to connect your application to the Content Hub 1 instance, and either you can connect it through a delivery endpoint, which is the one you would use if you have a publicly facing app that queries content from Content Hub 1 or from the edge in this delivery endpoint. Or we have a preview endpoint, so we can create an API key for the preview endpoint, which directly hits the GraphQL endpoint of Content Hub 1. So not Edge, but the internal one, just to preview, for example, content. And then we have the client credentials, which are not visible here, right? But here you get all the information about the client ID and client secret, which you would need in order to work with the APIs, for example. Okay, so I mean that's more or less already it. Content Hub 1 is small, but it does exactly what it should do. And let's jump back to the slides. Here we are. So let's talk about content modeling. For sure, every business has its own unique requirements, and therefore the way how marketers interact with content will be different for each requirement. So Content Hub 1 allows to model content that fits exactly the marketer's needs. So content modeling is basically the process to define the structure of the content to help organize and manage it. So a content model basically defines the structure of the content. What fields are shown to the author, what field types are used, are fields mandatory or not. So the content model guides the author what content is required in what format. And if you've worked with XM or XP before, it's basically like a template, right? So when modeling content, you have to have your requirements in mind, and content can have different purposes and also, therefore, different approaches that you can choose. Yeah, that can be different as well. So let's go through a few examples on how you could approach modeling content. So you can consider, for example, a certain data type. Let's say you need to model a recipe, which needs to be shown on certain pages. So a recipe might have a name or ingredients or the time you need to prepare the dish or a description how to prepare the dish and maybe an image of the result. For sure, your recipe requirements can be different, but just as a small example. So each field would use then certain field types. For example, the name can be a short text, which refers to a single line text field, and we can say this is a mandatory field. And then the ingredients can be a short text as well. Maybe the minutes to prepare is then a number field, and the preparation description can be a long text, which is a multi-line text field, or even a rich text. And then the image would be of type media, for example. Another use case would be to model content per component and on the screen. So for example, a hero banner component that requires a background image and a title and description for the overlay. For example, the new website of the Sitecore user group Germany uses exactly that approach. So they have more or less a one-pager and have differentiated their content into different components, and each component queries the data of a certain type. Right, so each horizontal bar that you see there is basically querying it. If you want to check it out, you can reach the Sitecore User Group Germany site under www.sitecore-usergroup.de. Yeah, a third requirement would be to model content to manage a website, like with multiple pages. So you as a developer want authors to be able to adjust the header, footer, and the main content area without involving further developers. So with all that, always keep in mind how flexible or independent the marketers or authors needs to be. Yeah, so let's create a certain content type. Let's go back to Content Hub 1 and let me add a type. So always on the top right corner, you have this purple button to add something, either content or media items or content types in this case. So I want to create events, and the ID is automatically taken from the name, but I can change it here if events is not the right ID that I want to use. That's the only time where you can change the ID. So yeah, you should make up your mind. You can add a description now or later. I will leave it blank for now, and then come into the screen where I can model my content. So I add a field, and now I have a choice of field types. This will be extended in future, but these are the field types that we currently have available. So as an event, we might want to have an event name of type text, and I want to make it we can make it like that. And we want to make it a short text, and we want to have it required, for example. Save it. Well, yeah, let's add another field. For example, we need a date, right? When does the event happen? So let's call it event date. Then we want another field, for example, the location. I make it a single line text field or short text field again. And then add maybe a description. So let's use a rich text field for now. Description. And maybe let's use a reference field. So a reference field always references other content items. And let's say we want to reference speakers, right? On our event, we have speakers. So I call that field speaker, and it's of type reference. Right, save it. And if I go back now to create content, so into the content area, I can add now content of type events. So I can give this a name. Let's call it Jaipur, for example. My event name is the same, so that the previous one was my item name or my content element name. The date is today, right? We have that basically online. We can put some description in here. Sorry, I don't have text prepared here. We can do minor formatting, like putting text bold or italic, adding links, adding code snippets or quotes, and then you can basically style that in your application as needed. And then we can choose certain speakers. So I have created speakers before, at least I hope so. Let's see. Yes. So there are 3 speakers. Let's take her as a speaker and save it. So that's basically how it works, right? We have a requirement, we make up our mind on how that can be implemented. We model the content and then let authors fill in the content. So that was more what a marketer will see and use, beside maybe the content modeling, but that would be also an option that a marketer models the content. But what do you need as developers or architects? Let's start with an architecture and the APIs offered by Content Hub One. So Content Hub One offers of the data storage for sure, as well as an application to manage the content. The application we've seen already. It's a SaaS product, so more of a black box, but we also don't have basically to care about it. So the content is delivered using the delivery APIs. On the one hand, the media delivery API and the content delivery API, both geographically distributed. So the content delivery API provides a GraphQL Edge endpoint, and the media delivery API is basically a CDN delivering media assets. Additionally, there is a preview API. I think I mentioned that before. So also with a GraphQL endpoint, but pulling the data from the Content Hub One directly instead of Edge. So it shows non-published content, basically. So publishing would be the process of copying the data into the Edge delivery, either to the delivery API or the media delivery API. To manage content, Content Hub One offers a content management API as well as a media upload API. So this can be used to export and import data from or to other sources. Last but not least, Content Hub One offers an SDK and a command line interface. The CLI can be used to mainly serialize or deserialize content and media items as well as content types. So let's have a closer look on the delivery and preview API. As mentioned, the delivery API as well as the preview API offer a GraphQL endpoint to query for data. So the major difference here, just to repeat that, is that the delivery API delivers content from Edge in a scaled manner. So this is great for application hitting a public audience. Content needs to be published to the Edge for sure, and otherwise it would not be visible. And the preview API is directly approaching Content Hub One authoring environment, so it shows also content that has not been published yet. For sure, as the name says, it's only for preview purposes. So don't build your publicly facing app based on the preview API because the API is not scaled. So let's have a quick look on the APIs, and therefore let me go back to the browser and to the playground. So we've created, for example, events, but we've also created products. So in order to hit the API, Sitecore offers this GraphQL IDE. So we connect to a certain endpoint. In this case, we are connected with the delivery API. And well, I should hide that maybe, but anyway. And we have to provide the HTTP headers, the API key to our application. Anyway, it was not fully shown, so it will be hard to guess the rest of the API key. So what we can do here is basically create our GraphQL query to query content and use that query later on in our application to query the data. So if I hit that, you will see that we have an apple and we have blueberries available. And well, the apple is just what I created, right? So this is as we publish the data, it's now visible here as well. When you want to create such a query, it's quite easy. Let me just delete most of it, and so you can use IntelliSense, right? By typing control space, you have the options what to do next. So you can say, well, I want to have the total amount of returned data, and then I also want to have the results, and the results is basically the returned data. So if I start typing, I get already some suggestions on what I can query for in the context of the products. So of course I want to have the ID, and maybe I want to have a name and the product name. Let's see what's there as well. So let's have a product description and the product image and maybe a product price and the related products. Now the image is again a list of items or media items. So we have to say we want the results. All right, so I'm basically recreating the query just so you see that it's really easy to do that. So the media item has a description field, it has the ID field and a name field that we saw, but it also provides information about the media asset. So usually we want to have either the ID or we want to have the file URL that we can use in our application to display the actual image. So let's say I want the file URL. And then the related products is again a list of content items. So let's see what we got. Important here is the type name field, because the type name field tells us of what type the results are. Let's see if we already get a result. Yes, we do. So we can see, well, we don't. Do we have related products? We don't. Interesting. Probably the other products that I related to were not published, so that's why they're not displayed here. So if I would publish them, I would probably see those. Right. Yeah, that's basically the GraphQL IDE that helps us checking on what data is actually published to our delivery endpoint, but we can also use that on the preview API to query on the GraphQL endpoint of the preview API directly in Content Hub 1. Back to the slides. So another great developer tool is the command line interface. I think I mentioned that before as well. So it provides the capabilities to store content items in your source code repository and deploy those into your Content Hub 1 tenant using the serialization functionality. So you can also create content packages, you can create and manage API keys, and you can publish and unpublished content. So the CLI also helps you to automate things. Of course, this is a SaaS product, so you might ask for like, why do I need to serialize or deserialize content? Because I have this one instance. So where should the content go to through my source code repository? Well, we had the use case, for example, with the starter kits. So when you run those, we have serialized content in there. It will directly deploy this content to your instance if you run the setup script. And that's what we used it for. You might also have different environments later on, like a dev environment and a production environment. So maybe you want to ship content also this way, like which is more a setup content, let's say, right? So content types, for example. Okay, let's have a look on the CLI, and therefore I will go into Visual Studio Code. Let me just open a terminal here. So, and maybe I go somewhere else. I go one step back and call that a folder called Jaipur. There we go. So let's see. So I can basically push and pull content. Therefore, I need to connect my Content Hub 1 CLI. So I have installed the CLI already, which you have great documentation about. So I will not show how to install it. That would just eat too much time. But if and you have always a help function, which I don't have here. Interesting. Let me see. It's ch1 CLI. Sorry for that. Haven't used it for a while. So here we go. So you can see that you have three major commands available. You have tenant, you have delivery, and you have SIR or serialization. Well, the tenant is to manage your connections, so you can connect to your Content Hub 1 tenant or instance. Then delivery is all about creating API keys, and I think also about publishing. And then you have serialization, which is serializing your content into YAML files. I think it's YAML or JSON. Oh, we will see in a second. Okay, so let's for example serialize content. So we do a ch1s, and we don't do a pull, but we don't do a push for sure. A push would push content from my file system into my Content Hub 1 instance, but I will pull the content now from my Content Hub 1 instance, and I want to pull content of type products. So let's see if that works. So it's looking for content items, and it's pulling basically well, 5 items, one with a cryptic ID, and then a kiwi, a strawberry, a blueberry, and a raspberry. So it's not in this folder, but let me just quickly, well, let me open up my my Explorer. So going here, Next.js starter kit, here we are. You will see it in a second. Close that down. So what you see is in the folder Suk Jaipur, it has created certain folders for me. So some folders that have general information like the .sitecore and the .vs code folder. But then it created also the content items folder, which contains another folder named after my content type, which is products. And then in here, I find a representation, a serialized representation of my content items. So I have my blueberry, and it's always named after the ID of the item, and then the type name, which is, oh, sorry, it's a content item, and then it's a YAML file. So let's have a look into the, well, we created the, I think that should be the apple, right? So let's have a look on the apple and see how that looks. So yeah, it's a YAML file. It's serialized version of our content. So we have the ID and the name, and then we have the custom fields under fields. So we have the product name, which is has the value apple, and then it is of type short text. So this way we can always reference back to our content item. And then we have all the information basically, and we have the related products. So here we connected directly to Content Hub 1, not to the delivery endpoint. So it doesn't matter if the content is published or not, right? So if we go back here, and maybe we also want to have our content types. And let's say we want to have the content type of the ID products. So the definition of the content type products, let's see. So it's looking for it. It has pulled it. And if we go back to that folder, we see that there should be, right. So there's a content types folder now, which again has a YAML representation of the definition of a product's content type, so of the content model, which again, it has an ID, it has a name, and then it has a definition of the fields. So there is a field called product name. It is of type short text. It's not required, and it has a product description. Sorry, and there's another field called product description and so on, product quantity, product image, and so on. Pretty straightforward, I would say. Let's go back to the slides. Okay, so the content management. Let's talk about the content management API. So that allows to manage content from outside of Content Hub 1. So that can be useful when doing content automations using, for example, Azure Functions or I don't know, any other cron jobs or so. So when you want to export or import content or automatically enhance content, that's where you would go for using the content management API. So the content management API works with all kinds of content types. So you can create, update, delete, read any kind of content types, content, media items, API keys, and even users that have been logged into Content Hub 1 yet. Right, so let's take a look at the content management API. Where is that? So on the one hand, we have, let's go to the browser first. On the one hand, we have a Swagger API, which you find also documented in our Content Hub 1 documentation. So here you see basically all endpoints that you can query. So you can work with content types, obviously, with content items, and you can get them or create content types by using a post request and so on. So everything is basically described in here, which you are fine to try out. The first thing you need to do is to authorize, and then you can use the Swagger API here with all its documentation. What we've also done, and I've created I've documented that as well. Let me just go to Postman. Here we go. So there is a content management API collection available on my GitHub gist account, basically, which I share from there. And it's basically the same like the Swagger API, but if you like to work with Postman, you find the product examples in there as well. So first thing you would do is then basically to authenticate. So you run the authentication request and use this one, like this key or this bearer token, basically. I use that here on my collection, so I'm just using it for the whole collection. And then if I want to create a new content type, so let's say I want to create bananas. Banana could be right. Oh, well, it's delicious. Banana. Let's hit this one. Looks like it got created. Let's double check that on Content Hub. There we go. There's a new product called Banana. And it even uses a banana image. Why? Because I had a banana image uploaded before, and I used, well, where is it? Product quantity, product image. So I used the ID of the product image and then the URI using the same image ID as well. Right, so this way I created now content using the content management API. And there's much more to explore, but I think that could be a whole, but maybe also boring session on its own. So beside the content management API, there's also the media upload API, which allows to upload media and create required media items. So I'm not going into too much detail here, but there's a certain workflow that you have to follow, and that's also what you find in the collection as well as in the Swagger API documentation. So the flow to upload basically a new asset works like this. You need to create an upload link first on your or from your media media server basically, and this URL will be further used to upload the asset. The upload needs to be completed, which is another call, and then a media item needs to be created, which is basically the entity in your Content Hub 1 instance that knows details about the image that you have uploaded before. So no worries, this is very well documented in the Sitecore docs for Content Hub 1. I also used this, and yeah, it just worked. But you can also use then the Swagger API definition or the sorry, the Postman collection. Okay, so now the most important part, right? We know the tools, but what can we do next? So for sure, we want to implement applications to display the content maintained in Content Hub 1. And we can use any kind of app development framework, such as Vue or Angular or .NET Core or React or Next.js or you name it, even others. Whomever can read a graphical endpoint, whomever can approach any of these APIs can be used basically to utilize the content maintained in Content Hub 1. You only need to connect, as I said, to the graphical endpoint and query for the content you need, and then create awesome applications. Now, to support you creating application even faster, we have published some starter kits for several front-end frameworks, and these should give you an easier start, guide the development, and show simple implementation examples. So on the one hand, we have, and let me just go to GitHub. So on the one hand, we have on the Sitecore account on GitHub, we have the Content Hub 1 examples repo, which contains very simple examples for Astro, Next.js, Svelte, and Vue. So these are the four frameworks we have until now created some starter kits for. And you find a README file how to utilize them. And what you get at the end is basically like a Next.js starter page. So you have just one page that is hooked up to your Content Hub 1 instance, and then you can start modeling your content. And it's already pulling data from your Content Hub 1 instance. So it's very easy to set up. And then there's another one. Let me see if I can find that from here. Right. There's the Content Hub 1 Next.js starter kit. So as the name says, it's based on Next.js, but it contains already a little bit more examples. So I have that running locally here. So how it looks like when you get this running. Again, this is fully described in a README file, and there's a setup script that helps you pushing all the data into your Content Hub 1 instance. But what you get is basically some navigation, a hero image, some text, and then basically recipes of, well, not real recipes, but dummy recipes, let's see, for soft ice, donuts, and delicious pizza. So at least here in Germany, we're close to lunchtime. So, well, let's hit the read more button for the pizza, and then you get some details on it. That's so a very, very simple website example, but it, if we take a look into it, it contains already a lot of implementations that you can reuse, like how you connect, for example, how GraphQL queries are written, how the whole setup is done, approaching the APIs, the CLI, and so on. So all of that is here, and also the serialized items are here, like the content items and the content types. I know that you asked for going a little bit deeper into the starter kit, but maybe we can handle that through some questions, and I'm pretty sure we have time at the end, because I'm not far from the end already. So yeah, let's go back for now. And the demo was done. So let's do some wrap up. So summarizing what I just showed in this presentation, Content Hub 1 is a very fast time to value tool due to its simplicity, and the APIs makes the content available for all kinds of applications. The nature of SaaS helps you to get started very fast, and in addition, we provide great documentation, tutorials, and the starter kits just shown. So the offered APIs make integrations kind of very easy, I would say. I mean, I mentioned it was released in December 2022, so I would claim Content Hub 1 still as a very new product. So not all features have been released yet that we would like to see in the product. And we get a lot of feedback on features that people like to see once they get started. So this is all on the list. I can promise that. I can't just promise on when this is going to be delivered. I'm not the master of the of the backlog. So, however, as shown, you can model your content and author your content. You can publish it to your scaled edge delivery layer. You can manage your media items from here. You can search and filter your content in your authoring environment, and you can preview content using the preview API. You have support using SDKs and CLI. Well, we haven't talked about the SDK yet. Okay, well, if you have questions about that, maybe we tackle that later. And we're currently working on adding field validations. For example, when we use the reference field, you've seen that we could reference basically any kind of front content type, right? And it would have been good for the event to only reference speakers and not anything. So that's in work. Also, bulk operations are in work, so that you can bulk upload or bulk publish from the application. A select field type is planned so that you have kind of a drop down, which would help as well. And then one big thing that's currently missing and that we hear again and again from partners and clients is localization. So there is currently only one language that you can maintain. You can choose which one it is. It's stored as ENUS or with the ENUS locale, so it's probably English, but it's not supporting multilingual approaches per se. And with that, I hope it was valuable time spent for you. And yeah, let's have some questions.
There are some questions on the chat, so
Okay, let me check. Right, so content type is, I mean, it's not exactly the same because I think in XM you can do much more with it and you have more field types, for example, but the idea is the same. So content type is similar to a template. You define your content through a content type. So that's correct. Yeah. Can we create hierarchical data like catalogs and categories underneath? And it, well, so we don't. What you've seen is we only have this flat hierarchy, and you can search for the content or filter the content. So it's not like we have folder structures like we know it from XM as well, right? What we can do indeed is reference content. So you can always say, well, I have a content item that's higher in the hierarchy that references items that are lower in the hierarchy, and you can build your tree structure this way, especially when you want to build an app that maybe comes from a certain, as you mentioned here, maybe from a certain catalog or categories, and you want to go into products or variants of that product and so on. So you would rather solve that using references in Content Hub 1. And let me know if that doesn't answer your question, right? Just unmute yourself if you can.
I got it. Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. Can we add validation for reference type fields to allow only particular type data? Yeah, well, we exactly. That's what I mentioned at the end, right? So
yeah,
it's
you covered in that field validation.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely a needed feature, and I've seen it in every implementation where it would have made sense. So I know that the team is currently working on that, and I've seen that in the product before it got released. But I think there was a bug connected to it, so they took it out again and fixing it right now. Content Hub versus XM Cloud versus Content Hub 1. Okay. Well, I have actually a slide for that. It's hidden. Let me just put this one up. Let me see if I can get it. Just a second. I mean, it's not the answer of everything, but it's just a visualization of your question. And I have to take this off. Yeah, here we are. Well, it doesn't contain Content Hub, but I can tackle this one. So if we start historically, let's say, right? So we had XM and XP, which is, as it says here, all-in-one solution. So we have one big tool that masters it all. Basically, it has personalization, it has content management, and you can run it in your own cloud. You can run it on premise. You can run it in a managed cloud, so run by Sitecore. And the next idea was to have actually a SaaS product of XM in this case, so not XP, but XM. So XM Cloud is basically the successor of XM and XP. It contains already personalization features and also additional features that XM doesn't have. For example, if XM doesn't provide the pages or the new components builder. So XM Cloud is definitely like the way forward, at least for Sitecore. Not saying that XM or XP are not supported anymore, and there are still releases. We recently released 10.3, which offered a lot of headless SXA features, for example. So there is still feature development. However, our product focus in moving forward is the composable world, and therefore the successor is XM Cloud. Now, Content Hub One, as I mentioned in the beginning, is it's also a content management system, right? So same as XM Cloud. However, Content Hub One is much more lightweight, which you will also probably see in the pricing. And the idea of Content Hub One is to tackle the pure headless content management market on the one hand, but also to be a player in pure omnichannel content creation, meaning if you need to deliver content headlessly to any kind of application, and that can be a kiosk app, that can be your smartwatch or smartphone, that can be a website at the end again. But if you want to centrally manage content, that's where Content Hub One is really good in, because it's like you manage content more or less individually on what the layout will be at the end, right? It's content definition, and you expose that to applications, and application will display the content however these application will need to display, but they have consistency. So you have a consistent content management in one place. And not saying that XM Cloud can't do that. So XM Cloud also has APIs as XM and XP as well. So you can do omni-channel delivery, but I would say it's not primarily made for that. XM Cloud, same as XM and XP, its focus area is to create web experiences, and with web mostly on websites, I would say, right? Where, just to repeat that, Content Hub One is more targeting omnichannel, so content independent of layouting. And XM Cloud has strong features in layouting. You have page layouting, may it be in Pages or in the Experience Editor, or you have even soon coming the component layouting, where you have a no-code experience to create components. So that's what I would say are the major differences. And we haven't tackled Content Hub. And Content Hub, with Content Hub, we mean DAM or operations, I would say. A small part of Content Hub DAM is, I think, how is it called? CMP, content management, something like that. So a part of what Content Hub One provides today is also part of Content Hub DAM. Yeah, there's an overlap, and that will be probably cleaned up in a while. But Content Hub DAM, as the name says, is a digital asset management along with all its content processing capabilities. That's where the DAM is very strong in, right? So having metadata, processing assets, and also publishing it at the end to a CDN. So all asset management is what Content Hub DAM, I would say, is strong in. You can use Content Hub DAM also for headless content management, and there is a part in it which covers that. Yeah, so there's definitely an overlap, but it's definitely the bigger tool, and therefore I would expect, even though I'm not the guy for pricing and sales, I would expect that Content Hub DAM is more expensive than Content Hub One. So if you're just searching for content management at a lighter scale and with the purpose of omnichannel, and I think that's a key trigger here. If you hear omnichannel and it's not so important to lay out your pages and components, then that's the way forward. And then Content Hub operations is basically the whole management around the assets. So I would say a complete different area than any of the players here on the screen. I hope that covers the question.
Yeah, thank you. So we can assume that now Content Hub One and DAM is a subset of Content Hub where we decompose the things, right?
Well, Content Hub DAM will not necessarily be decomposed into different parts. We just saw on the market that it makes sense to have a better headless content management player and a single player as a headless content management system. So that's why we took it out of the DAM and made it an own product, even though the content part is still in the DAM. So it's not taken out. It's just like there was a need for it, and we've created a product for it in the composable suite. That was more the idea.
Okay, thank you. So here, like we need to do publishing as well to send the content to the CDN, right? So can we schedule the things, or can we have the Sitecore publishing module in between these things somewhere?
So out of the box, there's currently no scheduling in place. What I've done, or what I'm currently in, no, let's phrase it like this. I'm currently in process of doing that, is using, for example, the Vercel cron job feature. You can also use Azure Functions or something like that. So a job basically that's using the content API and publishing based on certain criteria, every, I don't know, hour or 5 minutes or whatever you need, right? So you can have an external job taking care of that right now, but it's not in the tool itself. But therefore, you have APIs to basically implement all the features that are based on your client requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's see. Are there more questions? I don't see questions in the chat.
If you have any questions, so you can mention on the chat, or I can unmute you.
Just raise your hand maybe, or just put it in the chat. I will, in the meantime, paste the gist link that I promised for the collection, the Postman collection, and just try to find it. Yeah, but if there are no more questions, I think we're anyway over time. Oh no.
Yeah, I don't think we have more questions.
Great, then thanks a lot.
Yep.
Again, I hope this was valuable time spent. There are, just to mention that on our Discover YouTube channel, there are videos out there that cover the topics that I mentioned today as well. So if you want to rewatch that, you can also do that there. But the session is recorded, so I believe it's also being published. Yeah, just to mention that.
Okay, thank you so much, Sebastian, and thanks everyone for joining the session.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.